Meetings with difficult questions. Controversial Celibacy, Part 1. Hello, my name is Father Max and you are very welcome to this recorded discussion about possibility of cancelling celibacy in the Latin Catholic Church. It is an edited version. I have cut out all the off-topic discussions, pauses, etc. Also, I give my consent to share this file or publish it to everybody. Those who attended the meeting made their points and asked some questions, and since I don't have their permission for publishing it, I cut them all out as well, but I reread their points and questions with my own voice. Not even one of them will be missed. However, I am pretty sure most of the people are convinced that cancelling celibacy will help vocations and will significantly decrease the number of sexual abuses in the church. It is a very strong belief, and since during the meeting my explanation of these 2 points was really short and insufficient, I went really deep into the matter. This made the file way too long, so I've decided to publish it separately. Please do check Part 2, Celibacy, Vocations and Sexual Scandals. Also, during the meeting another issue had been raised, namely, are priests the only ones who can minister in the church? Why not to establish a share ministry, lay preachers and lay governors of parishes? It is an issue which barely touches the matter of celibacy, and this problem demands a proper exploration. So I will publish lay preachers and lay governors of parishes separately, as a next series. Let me repeat, not even one point of my listeners will be ignored. Also, I added my further thoughts, sometimes going really deep into the matter, so be ready for that. I can't call my answers comprehensive, but I did my best. Hopefully you will find it helpful, so please forgive my poor English and enjoy. We have lack of priests, parishes are closing. In order to help this, we have to cancel celibacy. But for some reason, ununderstandable reason, church just stuck in medieval ages. Maybe these things were working in medieval ages, but apparently they don't work today. Why church is so unreformable back in past? But let's begin with the fact that I'm Ukrainian. This fact has 2 consequences. First consequence, I could be very strong. I am not English, so if I'm making no bones, if I am too straightforward, I really don't want to insult anybody or offend, so please have mercy on me. And second fact, 99.9% clergy in my country are married. So celibacy in Ukrainian mindset is something very alien. Ukraine is an Orthodox country, mainly, but in the western parts of Ukraine, there is a Ukrainian Catholic Church, very, very strong. And Ukrainian Catholic Church is the same Catholic Church as we are. We can celebrate, they take part in conclave, for example, when the Pope is elected. They take part in all the councils, etc. We have even common conferences of bishops, and Ukrainian Catholic bishops and Roman Catholic bishops are gathered together. So we are one and the same church. And they are married, they have married clergy. But in the Code of Canon Law of the Catholic Church here, it says that only unmarried men can be ordained. Does it mean that Ukrainian Catholics have another canon law? Yes, they have different law. So how many laws are in the Catholic Church? 24 is the answer. We have Coptic Catholic Church, they have their own law, Eritrean Catholic Church, Ethiopian Catholic Church, Armenian Catholic Church, Albanian Greek Catholic Church, Belarusian Greek Catholic Church, Bulgarian Greek Catholic Church, Greek Catholic Church of Croatia and Serbia, Greek Byzantine Catholic Church, Hungarian Greek Catholic Church, Italo-Albanian Catholic Church, Macedonian Greek Catholic Church, Melkite Greek Catholic Church, Romanian Greek Catholic Church, Russian Greek Catholic Church, Ruthenian Greek Catholic Church, Slovak Greek Catholic Church, Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, Chaldean Catholic Church, Syro-Malabar Catholic Church, Maronite Catholic Church, Syria Catholic Church, Syro-Malankara Catholic Church, it's in India, and we Latin Catholic Church. All these churches have their own law. All these laws are approved by Vatican, and if they have any problems, they all go to Vatican. That means that Vatican has wide experience in married clergy, because in all these churches, all the priests are married. Only in Latin Rite and in Latin Catholic Church, celibacy is obligatory. So again, Church didn't start in medieval ages. The Church has wide experience in married clergy and knows every pros and cons. Teaching of the Church has two things: faith and moral teaching. So teaching of the Church about faith is unchangeable. We cannot change what was said. Every dogma of faith cannot be changed. Well, I'm simplifying a bit, because every dogma has different dogmatic ranks. De fide in Latin, and so from solemn teaching of the Church, usual teaching of the Church, we have common teaching of theologian or ita communius, etc. Forget about that, I'm simplifying. But anyway, presence of Jesus Christ in the Holy Eucharist, can it be changed? No. Jesus resurrected physically in his body and soul. Can this be changed? No. Because if we change this, that means that truth is not objective. Did he resurrect or not? Or we are teaching what is convenient right now, just to gather people, or we are teaching what is the truth. So faith is unchangeable and irrevocable. If something is proclaimed as a dogma, if the Church openly, clearly put a full stop, it is full stop. Moral teaching of the Catholic Church cannot be changed, but can be developed. From admitting, not approving, admitting capital punishment, to not admitting capital punishment. Recent days, Pope Francis changed the catechism of the Catholic Church in this method. In 10th century, there was no transplantation of organs, and now we have transplantation of organs. So we can develop this moral teaching, because the Church has to say his word. So we have teaching and we have practice. I'm not going deeper, because some practice cannot be changed, like celebrating sacraments, because it is connected with the faith. But in practice we have discipline. Discipline is something outer. What language Holy Mass is celebrated? It can be changed. The Mass structure or order of prayers can be changed, and it was changed. All other discipline inside the Church, including punishments for some things, can be changed. So the question about celibacy is about question, where is celibacy? It is here, so it cannot be changed because it's faith, or it is discipline of the Church, and it can be changed. What do you think? It is discipline. It can be changed. Celibacy can be changed. It is important to understand, because we will return to this later. Celibacy can be changed, and personally, I'm not against that. Interesting fact that priests don't complain about celibacy. Did you hear about thousands of letters signed by priests to Vatican for cancelling celibacy? And there was a point that quite a lot of priests have had to leave their priesthood because they couldn't keep their vow of celibacy. And my answer was, quite a lot of men leave their wife for another one. And since it is a very good point, let me answer it properly. First of all, it does happen for married clergy from Ukrainian Catholic Church to leave the priesthood as well. To be honest with you, I don't know the figures, but I would guess that the numbers are pretty similar in Latin Church and Greek Catholic Church. But to say lots of priests are leaving the priesthood is basically manipulation. How many priests are leaving their priesthood? So I have found an article here by John Paolo Salvini, a Jesuit priest, called Priests Who Desert, Priests Who Come Back. And this extract is taken from an article commissioned by Cardinal Bertone and published in the 21st of April 2007 issue of La Civiltà Cattolica. Salvini says, Each year from 2000 and 2004, an average of 0.26% of priests have left the priesthood, or 5,383 in 5 years. At the same time, there has also been a rise in the number of those asking to be readmitted to the priestly ministry. Of the 1,076 priests who leave the ministry each year, 554 ask for a dispensation from the obligations imposed by the priestly state, celibacy and the recitation of the breviary. Of the remaining 552, 74 return to the ministry each year. It may be noted that 40% of the requests for dispensation come from priests belonging to a religious order or congregation. But we are talking about diocesan priests only. Celibacy cannot be cancelled for members of the congregations or orders because it is their essence. And so this number, 0.26% of priests, we can assume 40% are from religious orders and 60% are diocesan priests. So 60% of 0.26% is 0.156% of diocesan priests who left the priesthood. Let me stress, it is in 5 years, not 1 year, and small number returns. And of course, not all of them abandoned the priesthood because of the celibacy. Salvini says, the reasons for leaving, at least those which are declared, are quite diverse. Most of the requests for a dispensation are due to situation of affective instability, depressions, serious behavioral limitations, but also crisis of the faith and conflicts with superiors or difficulties with the magisterium. Of course, each priest knows at least a couple of priests who abandoned the priesthood. I mean, they knew their situation and the true reason why they left their priesthood. And when we speak about that, we always come to conclusion that affair with a woman is not a cause of a crisis, but a consequence of a crisis. Among many reasons of leaving the priesthood, Salvini said conflicts with superiors. And I would put this reason in the first place in Ukraine, not in this country. Let me illustrate this. All I'm going to say happened in reality, but not to one priest, just collective image rather, and it was in Ukraine, not in England. So imagine a young priest newly ordained, and the bishop sends him as an assistant priest to a parish where a parish priest is a bastard, and he treats him like a slave. So all the things in the parish must do assistant priest while he's watching TV. He orders him to clean the presbytery. He pays him 2 times less than to organist. He hides food from him. I really know the situation. He insults him before the parishioners. And when this new priest goes to the bishop asking for a move, the bishop says to him, you was just ordained, so you have to stay, you have to be humble, return and work. And it's not a surprise that this priest is found in a crisis. And then a woman comes as a consequence of the crisis, and she gives him a consolation, and he thinks, why do I have to bear all these insults? She gives him a feeling that he is a master of his life, he can establish his own family, and he is a boss there, and here we go. Does it mean that he left the priesthood because of celibacy? No. And when we speak about all the situations between the priests, we know that percentage of those who left their priesthood purely because of celibacy, because they fell in love with a woman and left the priesthood, is always rare. And so affair with a woman is a consequence of a crisis, not cause, in most of cases. And just to sum up, in 5 years, 0.16% of all the clergy in the world abandoned the priesthood. And the vast majority of them did this not because of the celibacy reason. And now let me ask what it looks like in Christian marriages in terms of faithfulness to the given promises. A Pew Research Center published a report on 2nd of September 2015. Among the Catholics who have ever been married, 34% have experienced a divorce. Even worse, only 26% of this number have sought an annulment from the Catholic Church. 43% divorced Catholics who did not seek an annulment say they did not see an annulment as necessary or did not want to annul their marriage. And again, even worse, in the 1970s, nearly 75% of adults were married. Today, this number is 52%. So simply speaking, they live with a partner or partners outside sacrament of marriage, and this tendency is getting worse. That's why we have 34% against 0.16%. And when laity, with such a catastrophic numbers, want to help clergy, this 0.16% of clergy, it is so tempting to quote the gospel and say, "Physician, heal yourself." Or let me put it in the other words, who does really need help and reforms? Also, looking at these numbers, I've got an impression that those who live in celibacy are more faithful to their promises than those who live in the marriage. You can make conclusions yourself. But let us return to the discussion and my question, do priests complain about celibacy? Do we have these letters? No. Who complain about celibacy? You will be surprised at just the interesting facts, but in 99.9% cases, these are women. I met just two men in my life who ask about celibacy, both in England. In Ukraine, men, when they hear about celibacy, that I'm not married, they all say, "Very good, that's very clever." So priests do not complain about celibacy. And let's go a little bit further, namely history of celibacy, how this discipline was established. And I asked the question, did Jesus teach about celibacy? And the answer was no. Very bad. So we read in the Gospel according to Luke, chapter 18, verses 29-30. Jesus said to them, "In truth I tell you, there is no one who has left his house, wife, brothers, parents, or children for the sake of the kingdom of God who will not receive many times as much in this present age and in the world to come eternal life." The Gospel according to Matthew, chapter 19, verses 10 and 12. The disciples said to him, "If that is how things are between husband and wife, it is advisable not to marry." But Jesus replied, "It is not everyone who can accept what I have said, but only those to whom it is granted. There are eunuchs born so from their mother's womb. There are eunuchs made so by human agency. And there are eunuchs who have made themselves for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. Let anyone accept this who can." Celibacy remains, as well as obedience, humility, and poverty, the ideals of the gospel. So it's not the matter that the church made this discipline, all this awful writing there, made this discipline because it just wanted or it was convenient, but because, first of all, Jesus taught himself about that. And he said, those can understand to whom it is granted. So Jesus calls people to the celibacy. It is a calling of God. It's not just a matter of discipline. Okay, but what about Ukrainian Catholic Church? Well, fair enough. But let us just keep in mind that it's not stuck in medieval ages. It is a calling of God, and Jesus himself taught about that. I'm not going to go deeper to the Synod of Elvira, 4th century 306, beginning of obligatory celibacy. But when I was translating some parts of Fourth Lateran Council, it is year 1215, in paragraph 14, I found it was very amusing about impurity between priests. And it said it must be punished in this way. But in those regions where clergy preserved marriage, they have to be punished severely for impurity, because they could use their marriage bed legally. So there were, in the 13th century, in the Catholic Church, still some regions where clergy celibacy was optional. However, we can see that in 13th century it is already spread to almost the whole Catholic Church. There were some regions with no celibacy. Eventually it was established as obligatory and at last as a full stop only in 16th century. This is Tridentine Council, when the Church said for all the priests it must be obligatory, and from now on we have celibacy obligatory. As I said, celibacy can be changed because it's a matter of the discipline, but do you understand all the consequences? What the church looks like when the most of priests are married? First of all, it will not help vocations. Now all the Greek Catholics as well as Orthodox seminaries are empty, as well as ours. It is a problem worldwide. It is a very complicated problem. It is not based only on celibacy. Believe me not. So if Greek Catholic seminaries are empty, why do you think they will be full when we cancel celibacy?
Of course, we can remember Church of England, Reformed Church, Lutheran Church, where there is no obligatory celibacy, but they all have problems with their vocations. And so my question remains, why do we think that if in all other churches it doesn't help, it will help in our church?
I admit that there could be a wave, first wave. Now we have our diocese, I believe we have 4 seminarians, we will have 8 if we cancel celibacy. After 5 years, 10 years, it will drop.
The issue of vocations during our discussion was raised several times. I believe it is because I didn't convince people with my argument. So I went really deep into the matter of vocation crisis. Please do check part 2 for it.
Next thing, we think that we'll have more clergy and we'll stop closing parishes. It will be in opposite. When we cancel celibacy, all the small parishes will be closed. Why?
And there was a long discussion about the matter. Of course, I meant financial limitations. In the Diocese of Arundel and Brighton, but I believe not only in this diocese, the amount of £27,000 is adopted by the diocese as the amount that all former Anglican priests with dependents should receive. Let me ask, how many parishes can afford £27,000 a year to keep a parish priest? Let us look at our parish, the parish of Our Lady and the Saints of Sussex. This big parish is comprised of 4 churches: Chichester, Bosham, Witcherings and Selsey. Can this parish afford 2 married priests? I mean £54,000 a year just for upkeeping priests. Knowing well the budget of the parish and its income, the answer is no. For sure. So, now we have 2 priests, and in each church, except the Central Church in Chichester, we have 2 masses a week, one on Sunday, one on a weekday. And the people are complaining. Now, if the celibacy were cancelled, despite the number of priests, even if we have lots of vocations, we would have one anyway. There will be only one priest, and you can guess how many masses he will say in each church. Also, think of his availability, keeping in mind that apart from 4 churches, he has a wife who gives birth every couple of years. Also, he lives not in the presbytery because it's too public a building, but somewhere in the city. What will his availability look like? This is a great example of what cancelling celibacy means in the real life. I remember how one of the parish priests was talking about a roof reparation in his church. Very similar parish, a few churches and 2 priests. The total cost was like £160,000. Everybody said, "Oh, that huge amount of money." But I thought in my heart, it is just 3 years of having 2 married priests. So how many churches can afford changing roof for £160,000 every 3 years? This is why I so confidently say, if celibacy is cancelled, the number of masses will be reduced anyway. Just to compare, according to the diocesan financial policy, married priests must have a minimum of £27,000 a year. Unmarried priest, £5,500. Even if a parish can afford a married priest, its budget automatically becomes very limited. That means that if you have to repair the roof in the church or heating system or whatever, you will have to donate more. much more. Moreover, since number of masses is reduced, number of collection is reduced. You will have to donate even more. Moreover, since the bishop's house has less money, the tax on parishes will go up. You will have to donate even more. And then you can be consoled by the thought that, thank God, candidates to the priesthood have an option. Don't get me wrong, I'm just trying to show that clergy celibacy is your good. But we had a long discussion, and during it the point has been said that the celibacy is just a part of the problem, which makes me sad, because celibacy is not a problem. It is ideals of the gospel Jesus taught about. And also, time and practice prove that this is a common good. This is a good of the people of God and the good of the church. What does it look like in Ukrainian Catholic Church? They don't have small parishes like we have, simply for the financial reason. If we think that canceling celibacy will bring more clergy, and we stop closing or merging parishes, we are wrong. Canceling celibacy will have an opposite effect. Let me illustrate this. Ever since the church in Celibacy had been built, we always had a priest here. It wouldn't be even possible if we had married clergy. £27,000 a year just for upkeeping a priest for Celibacy is not imaginable, let alone other expenses. Next thing, married priests, they have less time for their parishioners. When you are asking about celibacy, it makes me sad. When celibacy is cancelled, the church will survive, of course. That's perfectly all right. The church will work, and the parishes will work, and everything will be all right. But you will be deprived of so many spiritual goods. For priests, it will be maybe better. But for you, I will have much less time for you if I'm married and if I have children. And my listeners made 2 points here. First is that it is sexist to say that wife distracts a parish priest from the parish. Overall, I agree. A parish priest who is married is not tearing apart between the two. There is no competition between the wife and the parish. They both can work for the common good of the church. This is in terms of the spiritual life of a married priest. But also the truth is that if I had a wife and 4 little children, my diary wouldn't be that free as I have it now. And this is obvious. When you think about a married priest, you probably imagine 50-year-old priest, ex-Anglican with mature children. Imagine you have 25-year-old priest who just got married and ordained. As a general rule, priest families have 3, 4, 5, 6 children because it is the family which is not supposed to use condoms. But so far, all these children are to come. Imagine accessibility of a priest whose wife gives birth every couple of years. Do you remember what it looks like having 4 very young children? The second point was that it is just a matter of organizing time, and they said we all are married, we all work, and we are effective. Yes, I understand. As I said, the church works. Greek Catholic Church is not dying. Orthodox Church is not dying. All these churches, sui juris, in the Catholic Church are not dying, but simply the fact that we, unmarried priests in the Roman Catholic Church, as a general rule, say much more masses than they do. This is the fact. We have much more meetings with the parishioners than they do. And again, it was the point that it is just a matter of how you are dedicated to your service. I understand fully what you said, but again, we have wonderful ideas, we have wonderful thoughts, and I'm coming with the facts. What it looks like in the church, in the Catholic Church, when they have priests married. We can say that the priest must be dedicated to the prayer, they're not distracted, and the wife takes full part of it. It's all wonderful, but when it comes to practice, it will be like this. When it comes into practice, Christmas Day, everyone wants to celebrate, including priest's family, his wife and children. After they have finished all the Christmas services, they go and celebrate. After I have finished Christmas Day services, it was purely my initiative to go and visit a parishioner who was dying of a cancer. So I went there. It was extended rite. We read the Christmas readings. I stayed there for quite a while. In this way, this person celebrated her last Christmas. If I were married, I would probably go the very next day or do a short ride. And nothing wrong happens, right? Overall, yes, nothing wrong. But to say that for this person there was no difference, then I give up. It's just a little example, which shows not only my availability. This visit was the best part of my celebration of the Christmas day, after celebrating Mass with my parishioners. I haven't got a wife, I haven't got children, that is why all my feelings and time are for you. This is spirituality of a celibacy, and how can we call it a problem?
As an unmarried priest, you can go to even a small parish and having a little income. It's not about greediness, but when you have family, you understand that you are responsible for other people. Another thing is having assistant priest. You know what it looks like in Greek Catholic Church when a parish has assistant priests? It means a different house. When we think about Epsom, for example, when they have one house only and two priests living there, I don't think this parish can afford two houses and two families. So basically, it's very rare in Greek Catholic Church Ukrainian that a parish priest has assistant priest. For the parish, it's very difficult to afford. That means that number of masses in Epsom is reduced. Forget about assistant priests, mostly. Another fact, when a priest is a doormat, handpacked by wife. So I met some of these situations. In this case, she wears the trousers, as you say in English, and in this situation, wife rules the parish. So when you want to do something in the parish, you go not to the parish priest, but to his wife, because she rules. Again, you could say, we have this priest, he's married, and we don't have such problems. Yes, because there are wonderful families in Ukrainian Catholic Church, but the more married priests you have, the more cases and problems you will have, statistically. It will be different when 95% clergy will be married. All these cases will emerge. And Ukrainians will come with their own wives, and they are different. Nigerian will come with their wives. Korean will come with their wives. And you have to deal not only with the priests, but their wives as well. And they are different. Ukrainian girls, one thing I have to say about them, they are beautiful. Second thing, they are really diligent. They can do everything. They can work and work and work whole day, but they are jealous. That means that if I say, for example, oh, Mary, I really do like your curly hair, if my wife heard it, oh boy. And when she, eventually you will have to go to Chichester to Mass. Once I was invited by my friend, a Ukrainian Greek Catholic priest, and he said, I am so tired, let's go and have a meal. In my house, my wife will cook. Okay, I will know already it will be confessions, etc. So yes. When we opened the doors, wife stood like this. It was very awkward, really, because she said, ignoring me, the fact that this is a different priest ignoring me, she says, where have you been? I had a meeting with my parishioners, and Mary was there. And I was read, it was such an awkward moment. He said, yes, she was there because she's my parishioner as any other parishioner. And she said to him, I know, I can see how she's watching you. Then he said, when we were having the meal, he said, sorry about that, sorry. And I said, don't worry, I understand, we are not robots, we are frail, we are men, and sometimes that could happen. So don't worry, absolutely. I understand that, it's family life. I am free. But you have just to understand that when priests are married, you have to deal not with the priests only, but with their wives as well. Next thing, what if my child abuses yours at school? Or in opposite, what if your child hits my child? So it will be a completely different relationship. We will be involved because my children will go to the same school as yours.
And my listeners said that as a community here, they have to deal with all these problems because their children go to the same school. I didn't make my point clear there. In my practice, I met quite a number of cases when people stopped coming to the church because a priest said something wrong. The people look at the priest in a different way. He is a public person, so what he says or what he does weighs more than your neighbor down the road would say or do. And the number of these problems will increase. For example, in Odessa I met a lady who said she hadn't been to the church for 15 years because a priest said in front of the other parishioners her son is misbehaving during the Mass. After 15 years, she accidentally heard that this priest is no longer in the parish, so she came back. I said, "I'm so sorry about the situation, but where is your son? He must be around 20 now." And she said, "Oh, he doesn't believe in God." Great. And this is what is happening all the time. A week ago, I had a phone call from a gentleman who was looking for a family member. Apparently, she used to be a parishioner in my church, but stopped coming because of advanced age. And he got offended because I didn't know her. I tried to explain it's very difficult to expect I should know a person who doesn't come to the church and never asks me for a visit. And he got offended and irritated. He said, if you spoke to your parishioners, you would know your parishioners better. A month ago, I had another phone call from the family who came to the church on a weekday afternoon and found the church locked up. They wanted to get some Mass cards. I opened the church for them, but we found we almost have run out of the Mass cards. I found only 2, and they said we expected the priest to look after the place. And if I said something apart from sorry, I assure you they will have a great story and a justification why they don't go to the church. If only you knew how many offenses are there because priests don't agree to play silly pop music in the church at the funerals. Please note, one family got offended because they wanted me to sit the whole day in the church. The other family took an offense because I don't go around the village visiting those who didn't ask for a visit. Laity always know better what a priest should be like and what he has to do. Anyway, please, do not underestimate the problem if my wife says something wrong or my child abuses yours at school. If it is a child of your neighbor, you will certainly deal with this easily. But if it is a child of a local MP, that's worth publishing an article in the newspaper, isn't it? I can see the heading, "The son of the local MP with lack of restraint bullies peers at school." This is because an MP is a public person as well as priest. So let me say this again, with a priest you have a different relationship. Being a public person, he and his family are being seen in a completely different way. Next thing, if you don't like the priest, he will not be changed. Greek Catholic bishops, once I had a conversation with a Greek Catholic bishop and he said, I have much more troubles with the wives of my priests than with the priests. So when I want to change from one parish to another, a priest, they took a vow of obedience, yes, and they are ready to go to another place. But then his wife comes and says, why I get a job there, my children go to school, I don't want to start everything from zero. So if you don't like the priest and that happens, he will be changed in 20 or 30 years. So changing priests in a Ukrainian Catholic Church or Orthodox Church happens 100 times rarer than in our church. Vocations. We're talking about vocations again. Waiting for the priesthood. We think that it will help us to have more priests when we cancel celibacy. No. Because I met lots of cases when a seminarian finishes the seminary, so he's ready to be ordained, and the bishop says, come on, I want to ordain you. And he said, no, because I don't know if you know that this is the apostolic tradition preserved in every church in the world. I mean Orthodox Church and all the Catholic churches of different rites. Ordained men cannot marry. It is a married man who can be ordained, but who received the sacrament of ordination cannot receive sacrament of marriage. That means that we have a permanent deacon. When a wife of this permanent deacon dies, he cannot remarry. Never. Priest cannot remarry. Never. He takes sacrament of marriage, then he is ordained, then wife dies,
and he lives in celibacy. No way. After the wife died, he is free to apply for priesthood, for example, but he cannot remarry. So what happens? A man finished seminary, he's 25, the bishop wants to ordain him and send him to the parish, and this seminarian says, no, I want to marry. So what's the problem? I didn't find the one. And he's waiting like 5 years looking for one. In our church, he's already serving in Celibacy. He's serving in Chichester. He's assistant priest in so many places. But this Ukrainian Catholic seminarian is waiting for his love, and sometimes it's difficult to find, and he's waiting, and he comes to the bishop from time to time. The bishop calls, how is it going? Have you found? I want to ordain you. No. And they are waiting, and they are waiting.
What would you say? How many years of dating is enough before receiving sacrament of marriage?
Another thing is, priests in Ukrainian Catholic Church don't want to live in celibacy for one reason. Because celibate clergy go to poor parishes. Poor parish cannot afford a family. So, being a seminarist in seminary, you understand that if I apply for celibacy, I will go to the small, tiny parish. And if I'm married, I go to a proper parish. And if you have plenty parishes and priests, this problem doesn't exist in our church. When we have more clergy than we need, imagine the situation, you simply send a new priest as an assistant priest. In Greek Catholic Church, it will not work because you have to buy another house. It's lots of money, and some parishes simply don't want, and there is no need. And the priests are ordained, and the bishop says, go to this small parish, go to Celibacy. And he says, no, because I am responsible for my children and for my wife. So what happens to this clergy? When we have more clergy than we need, we cannot send them as assistant priests. What happens to them? They work as taxi drivers, waiting for a parish priest to die and take his place. But there is another problem, because this parish priest he is waiting for, he's preparing his successor. Who? Who will be his successor? Who is he preparing?
His son.
His son. Exactly. So this is another problem which exists in the church where there is no celibacy. The next thing, I met such a case when wife doesn't believe in God, so she never attends Mass. Does it help for the good of the parish? I cannot imagine living with this person, to be honest with you, but when the whole parish knows that she's not attending Mass, but she was beautiful. Eventually, she left him, and he had 2 children. He cannot remarry, as I said. So he lives with his 2 children, trying to bring them up, and this is life. If you see my child drinking with hoodies at night, children of priests, they are altar servers, always. But what if they are not altar servers? What if they don't believe in God because they are teenagers? And the teenagers' life is different. So sometimes people are scandalized when they see a priest, drinking, etc. But you will have more cases with my children, my wife doing different things. I had another story which happened in Orthodox Church when Orthodox priest gave a sermon on Sunday. It was one of the first Sundays of Lent, and he spoke about fasting. And you know that in Orthodox Church there is a proper fast. You cannot eat meat, fish, fat, including butter, eggs, milk, sour cream, etc. All the things are excluded. So basically you can eat veg only with no oil. And after the sermon, his wife said to the people, don't listen to him because he asked me to cook meat afterwards. I had another case. I met this Ukrainian Catholic priest when he had 3 children, and one of the child, he was 1 year old, he drank this cleaning liquid and it burned his stomach So for 3 years, he just tried to fundraise and going abroad, working everywhere, simply trying to find money for the child. And he's a parish priest, almost no time for the parish. You could say, but that could happen to everybody, because every priest can have a stroke or something and he's not able to work. But when we have 100 priests, that's another thing. And when we have 100 priests and wives and 4 children in each family, 1,000, you will have more cases. Next thing, cheating on both sides. What happens if priest's wife cheats on her husband, or husband cheats? I met such a thing, and this is something you could say. There are some pedophiles, in the church, all the sexual scandals as well. Yes, but when you have 100 priests, you have 4 cases. When you have 100 priests and 100 wives, you have 9 cases. If a priest is suspended for something he has done, who pays for him and for his family? Because if you are suspended, you cannot have masses, you cannot be in the parish, you are not serving. You are actually suspended in all your services and ministering as a priest. But when you have wife and children, who pays?
And one of my listeners made the point that in the Archdiocese of Birmingham, Cardinal pays £7,000 a year for a notorious pedophile. It was a long time ago, so it doesn't seem that we have to worry. I think this person didn't get my point, and it's difficult to blame the laity for not knowing all the details of the clergy discipline. So let me explain this. Imagine an unmarried parish priest who was innocently accused of a sexual abuse. What happens to him? He is suspended immediately for the time of investigation, which could last for years. Being suspended means that he cannot celebrate Holy Eucharist publicly, he cannot celebrate any sacraments and do any ministering in the church. Temporarily, another priest is appointed as an administrator to run the parish, and this accused parish priest has to leave the presbytery. He doesn't do any work in the church, but the diocese is obliged to upkeep him, which in the case of an unmarried priest is not a big deal, it's just food or some basic needs. Imagine we have a married parish priest who was accused. He leaves the presbytery, and we have to appoint another priest, which is very difficult because wives of the priest don't want to go to another place and start everything from zero. Imagine going there only for 2 years or 5 years. And why this accused parish priest does nothing in the church, the diocese is obliged to provide him a home for him and all his family, and obliged to upkeep him and all his family. So this is the point. Who will pay for it? Of course, the diocese. But in the case of a married priest, it's a huge amount of money. It's not £7,000 a year. In the Latin Catholic Church, where there is celibacy, it's not a big deal. The parish will have another priest fairly soon, nothing bad happens. But when Ukrainian Catholic Church meets such a case, the accused parish priest stays in the presbytery because it is just impossible to provide them another home. And they simply ask a neighbor priest to cover. That means coming there and celebrating Mass once a week or once a month for years. And the diocese is still obliged to upkeep all his family.
Next thing, did you know that bishops in every Catholic church can be celibacy only? That means that when you are a seminarian, and most of priests who choose to be celibacy, they don't want to be celibacy, they want to be bishops.
Another problem which the Catholic Church in England would have is a problem with parish offices. In the most of our parishes, the parish office occupies one or several rooms in the presbytery. With married priests, we would have to find another solution, and it will cost. Some presbyteries are 2 public buildings. Apart from the office, there are lots of other stuff going on. Parishioners having meetings, using kitchen for tea and coffee, etc. That's absolutely lovely when people spend their time by the church with other parishioners. A priest is around. All these help to create a strongly united parish community. But this is an advantage of a celibate priest. It is definitely not safe for a priest's kids or appropriate for a wife. There are 2 solutions here. 1, accommodation has to be found for the priest and his family. 2nd, remove the office and the parish
from the presbytery completely. I was asked not to mention a parish which had to face this issue. You can calculate yourself how great a change it would be if the celibacy were cancelled, and how much would it cost just in terms of accommodation.
Another thing, celibacy in pedophiles. There is also this image. We have all these cases of pedophiles just because of celibacy. You know in what sphere of social life there are most cases of pedophiles? In schools, in churches, in families. To say if you are a celibate Catholic priest, you're more likely to be a pedophile. No, if you have children, statistically it's more likely for you to be a pedophile. So when we have married priests and families, probably it will increase number of cases. A little bit, but still. So celibacy and pedophiles has nothing to do in common.
Strong claim requires strong proofs, right? Please check the part 2 where I discuss sexual crimes and the celibacy in details.
And the last thing I wanted to say is missions. Have you heard about Ukrainian Coptic Syro-Malankar priests going to Africa, New Guinea and all these countries as missionaries? No. These are all privilege of unmarried clergy. So we will lose another great opportunity.
And there was a point from my listeners saying all these problems mentioned by me are not unsolvable. For example, moving priests. When you get married, you discuss this possibility, the wife is aware of it and agrees with it from the beginning. Every one of these problems has a solution.
Yes, I agree with you. I agree with you entirely. Because I did it deliberately, marking all the problems only. But I said that we have another wonderful examples of wonderful families, wonderful priests, and wonderful wife who helps a lot in the parish and is an example. Wonderful children, and there are I know some Ukrainian Catholic priests who went to a very poor parish and wife wanted to share this troubles and difficulties. I didn't speak about all the wonderful things, but I said that the church will survive. The church will do without celibacy. Yes, it is possible. It's not unsolvable problems, but I just wanted for you to understand the problems which you will meet, and if celibacy is cancelled, what goal will be achieved.
So my main point is simple, considering all the pros and cons. Yes, all these cons, all these problems I mentioned here are not fatal or unsolvable. The church will survive for sure. It will be much, much weaker. The people will be deprived of so many spiritual goods. But why do we want to do this? This is the cornerstone of the problem. What goal do we want to achieve by cancelling celibacy? Or, in the other words, what are the pros? And when I asked this several times, I got just one answer. The goal is for priests to have an option. Really? Really? You're ready for the significant decrease of the number of masses, closing parishes, priests living with their family somewhere in the town, far from the church, necessity to donate more on Sundays, and much limited parish budget just because I feel sorry for those young men not having sex. Your only worry is for them to have an option. Or another question, why you fight for them? Where are they? Why don't they ask priests about celibacy? Why don't they write or sign letters to Vatican again and again? I am asked about celibacy all the time, but in 99% cases by ladies, almost never by young eventual candidates to the priesthood. Why do you worry about them so much while they don't show any sign of a worry? Let me ask you once again, where are thousands of their letters to Vatican? Next thing, I am quite sure it is right when priests decide about priestly life. I am not a golf player, I know nothing about it, and I am not going to play golf. So in my opinion, it'll be strange if I demand some rule changes from the World's Golf Association. It was also said, there are some people who would like to become priests, but also they want to enjoy the married life. They must have an option. Sorry, but I'm not naive enough to believe in it. If they did at least something, not just blah blah blah, I would believe. But where are they? I barely can remember one or two young men who said this to me personally. But even if so, why should we believe them?
I think in most cases it's like a dream and justification at the same time. It is like to say, I would like to make a parachute jump, but the closest train station is in Kent. I would like to try safari in Africa, but it's too expensive. You've got an idea. But if we offer them a lift to Kent, if we offer them some money for the safari tour, how many of them will really go for it? Some of them will do. Some. Among the very little number of those who originally dreamed about it. And remember, priesthood is a very special calling. It's not a job strictly speaking. So it's fully normal when from 30 to 70% leave the seminary anyway. When I came to the seminary, my year was comprised of 16 boys. Only 4 became priests, including me. Once again, point about priests feeling lowly who end up becoming alcoholics. First thing, we have to remember that not every alcoholic became an alcoholic because he experienced difficulties. Alcohol, like drugs, makes you happy. Some people, happy people, with no serious problems, drink just to relax and feel a light euphoria. If they overdo it, the alcohol causes dependency. Think of all the young, pampered teenagers from wealthy families who became drug addicted or alcoholics. Second thing, there are priests who are unhappy in their priesthood. There are some who suffer from solitude. Some of them become alcoholics because of it. This is the fact. There are married people unhappy in their marriage. There are some married people who feel very lonely in their marriage. Some of them become alcoholics. This is also a fact. I can't say this is normal, but this is life. And there are hundreds of other reasons why people become alcoholics. This has nothing to do with the celibacy. It won't help or worsen the situation. Everyone has difficulties. Just stand up and fight against them. We're coming to an end. When I finished my points, there was a very interesting question. You will love it. Sounds a bit strange at first glance, but it's not. I'm grateful for raising it because I actually forgot to explain the essence of the celibacy. I am ridiculous. So the question was, can a priest who took a vow of celibacy have sexual relationship? This is a very good one. It is profound. The word celibacy comes from the Latin word celebs, which means unmarried. The vow of celibacy is a promise not to marry. Only. There is a big difference between the vow of celibacy, which diocesan priests take, and the vow of chastity, which monks promise. Chastity is a pledge to keep yourself pure in every sexual respect. I didn't promise it. I promise only not to marry. Strictly speaking, the sexual relationship between a celibate priest and a partner, if it's not a permanent relation, is not a crime and is not punished by the law, Canon 1395. Again, strictly speaking, I am in a position of a layman who hasn't received the sacrament of marriage yet. So, is it a sin for us both to have a sexual relationship outside the sacrament of marriage? I would like you to answer. It is where the asked question becomes profound. According to the report of the Pew Research Center, published on the 2nd of September 2015, despite the Church censure of cohabitation outside of marriage, 44% of Catholics say they have at one time lived with a romantic partner, including about 1 in 10 who currently live with a partner, 9%. In another survey among the United States Catholics of the same Pew Research Center, released on the 6th of November 2019, shows that of the people surveyed, 69% said they believed cohabitation was acceptable for an unmarried couple to live together without any plans to eventually wed. But before we strike Americans' breast saying, through your fault, let's hit our own breast first. In the National Synthesis document of England and Wales of the latest Synod on Synodality, in the Article 52 we read, there is repeated frustration and confusion around the whole area of marriage law, especially when so many are declined sacraments for their marital status. Marital status, what does it mean? Isn't it when people give to God a solemn promise to love and cherish till death do us part, and then break this promise for cohabitation with another partner? If people are allowed to break their promises, why should I keep mine? But if from the beginning people don't believe in the inseparability of the marriage, why do they promise it? And what does the word confusion mean?
confusion around the whole area of marriage law. Jesus himself taught about the sacrament of marriage, that it is a lifelong commitment, namely one man for one woman, till death do them part. The Gospel according to Matthew, chapter 19, verse 6. What therefore God has joined together, let no man put asunder. Verse 9, he said, I say this to you, whoever divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery, and he who marries a divorced woman commits adultery. The disciples said to him, if such is the case of a man with his wife, it is advisable not to marry. So we can see the disciples were also confused and frustrated around the whole area of marriage law. But while they eventually accepted the teaching of Jesus, preserved it and handed it down safe and sound, some Catholics of England and Wales demand from the Church to tear out some pages from the Gospel. Basically, they demand permission to commit adultery, permission to sin. But I, the stupid one, I opened an absolutely obsolete and irritating book, the Bible. What a silly thing to do. And read in the book of Sirach 15:20, God has not given anyone permission to sin. I opened also the Gospel according to Matthew 5:28. Everyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. And the very next verse in the same context, if your right eye should be your downfall, tear it out and throw it away, for it will do you less harm to lose one part of yourself than to have your whole body thrown in hell. How strange! It seems like adultery leads to hell. In the John's Gospel 8:11, to the woman caught in adultery, Jesus said, "Go and do not sin again." Now I understand why people crucified Jesus. Too many unpleasant words, constant frustration and confusion around his teaching. Nothing has changed. It's not easy to read the National Synthesis document on synodality, because we can see how some people who reject the gospel demand from the church to reject it as well. Thank God we have so many devoted people in our parishes. I don't know how wide this dangerous tendency is, but the fact their cries appear in the national document is worrying. I tremble before the thought that to some extent we might deserve closing parishes. Please, don't get me wrong. This is what Prophet Jeremiah has been sent to preach to the Jews. Because you are unfaithful to the covenant, God himself will destroy his own temple. And when God indeed destroyed his own temple, on the way to Egypt, escaping the Babylonian army, according to the tradition, the Jews cut Jeremiah's throat. Provoking moron. Now can you see how profound this question is? So what do you think? Is adultery a sin? If some say sexual relationship outside the sacrament of marriage is not a sin, then it is okay for me to have a lover. Why should people be scandalized? I will do only what they're doing, but not only doing, they're demanding from the church to admit it's alright. The main thing for me would be not to marry, because I promised it. Ideal situation for the males. Right at the end, one of my listeners said, well, sometimes it happens in life that there is a crisis, and then you come out of the crisis. So if the celibacy is cancelled, there will be a crisis with all the problems which you mentioned. But eventually you will go through all the troubles and you come out to the other side, where there are new things and good things which will be beneficial to the church. Oh boy. I might be wrong, but I've got an impression this person didn't get at all what I was talking about. But what he said sounds beautiful, doesn't it? Please remember, the beauty of the idea doesn't prove its authenticity. This person said there will be some good things beneficial to the church, but didn't say which ones. Please, list them one by one. I was asking for it all my session through. I can easily list the benefits of the celibate clergy. Very cheap to upkeep them, which makes possible build the churches for the small communities. Much wider parish budget. In terms of a guaranteed minimum, 2 unmarried priests are cheaper for the parish than 1 full-time secretary. Very high availability of celibate priests. They are fully dedicated to the parish. Extremely high mobility of priests. If you need a teacher in the seminary, you send a priest for studies. Tomorrow, you can send the same priest as a missionary to Papua New Guinea, no problems. If you need a bishop, you have a wide range to choose. If you need an army chaplain, what's the trouble? Eventually, it's extremely easy to move priests, to punish them and to bury them. They are fully within church's power and they are affordable. Probably you were surprised when I said it's easy to bury them, right? Think of this. I am a married parish priest with 3 very little children and we live in the presbytery. Box of chocolate. And then I had a cardiac arrest and died. My widow and children still occupy the presbytery. They have to have a home, right? When will you have another priest moved in with his family? I was asked not to mention a parish which always had a resident priest but now has a priest's widow and kids who have been living in the presbytery for many years. A new priest at the moment lives in the parish which had been merged earlier, a smaller one. Let us also think of a financial liability of the diocese with regard to the retired married priests or their widows. So yes, it's very easy to bury celibate priests. I can go on and on with the benefits of the celibacy. Here I touched just the practical aspects, not mentioning spirituality. So what are the benefits of the married priests? What goal do we want to achieve? We strongly demand from the Vatican the all-scale reform which will significantly change the whole church from the inside because there might be some benefits, but I don't know which ones. This is exactly what the person said. Sorry, but it doesn't convince me. Let me remind you, when I asked what are the advantages of the married clergy, the only answer I got during my session was for priests to have an option. But in Ukraine, when we were discussing the same matter, I got another answer. The priests will give us an example of a good family. No. Again, it's beautiful in theory, but simply won't work in a real life. And this is why. The priests, lots of priests, are an example of a sober life. Has anyone stopped drinking because a parish priest has no concerns with alcohol? No, but so often we hear lots of priests are alcoholics. Did anyone notice a sober one? Lots of clergy, the vast majority of them, are faithful to the celibacy, giving an example of how to treat women properly, in a pure way, with no passion, like mothers and sisters. Did anybody notice it? Did we think of it at all? No, but so often we hear it is because of celibacy we have all the sexual abuses. Even more, the celibacy is associated with sexual crimes. Do you really think that seeing priests' children once a week on Sunday at Mass, you will be that built that you will suddenly spend with your children 3 hours a day? Unfortunately, our human nature is distorted by the original sin, so we tend to notice mainly bad things. Look at the newspapers, they are a reflection of people's interests. So when we have 95% of married clergy, we will so often hear, oh, our parish priest's wife doesn't attend Mass, or the children of our parish priest drink with hoodies at night, or everybody says our parish priest's wife sleeps with the organist, etc. If your spiritual development really needs an example of a good family, look around. You will definitely find some. There are lots of wonderful Catholics around, but the best, look at Jesus Christ. He is the best example of all. He had a family even though he didn't have wife and children. Oh no, I forgot to say, Jesus himself lived in celibacy. After listening to all this, I bet most of you think that I lied when I said in the beginning that I'm not against cancelling celibacy. You might say, just listen to how he ardently defends celibacy, Jesus. I met some priests who say a married priest will never fully comprehend the mystery of the priesthood. If only you could see how ardently I argued that it is bull nonsense. My main point is that it is not right that laity fight for cancelling celibacy, and for 2 reasons. First, let priests decide about how they are to live. At least leave it to the candidates to the priesthood. Second, you don't know what you're asking for. Let us be afraid of being found in a position of those, Cicero said, damnant quod non intellegunt, which means they condemn what they don't understand. Let me give you an example. When the Queen died, I informed Ukrainian refugees in the area about this, saying, "Please express your sympathies to your sponsors, they will be pleased." All of them said, "Sure, thank you." But one person said, "Was she that important?" The last king we had in Ukraine was King Daniel or Danilo, crowned by the Pope Innocent IV in 1253. The whole story with the royal family in the 21st century is strange for Ukrainians. But why to condemn what we don't understand? Learn first, right? English in turn might be surprised how much Ukrainian embroidery shirt means for Ukrainians. We even have a national day of our embroidery shirt. Let us be afraid of condemning what we don't understand. Behind every norm of the Code of Canon Law there is history and argumentation. If we want to change something in the Church, let us be professional and learn the matter first. Learn why the Church established this law. Interestingly, in this talk I barely touched the history of celibacy and barely touched the argumentation of the Church. I did it deliberately. Why? Because I bet for the people it's boring. But if you disagree, please read the encyclical of Saint Pope Paul VI called Sacerdotalis Celibatus, or Priestly Celibacy, issued on the 24th of June 1967. He explains everything, mentioning the arguments against celibacy, including shortage of priests, and all the reasons why the Church preserved it. If you won't read it, I was right, for the people it's boring. My strategy was different. I wanted to show that you don't know what you are asking for. As usual, nobody was able to list the real advantages of married clergy, or in the other words, what the people so zealously fight for. Nobody knows, but keeps fighting. Instead, I mentioned all the problems which you probably never thought of, but you will have to deal with. No theories, but practice. Celibacy is first of all your good. As we say in Ukraine, do not sow the branch on which you are sitting. If I were you, I would sit silently, asking God in my heart not to allow canceling celibacy as long as possible. Beware of your dreams, they might come true. The day it happens, I will say to all seminarians, my sincerest congratulations. But to you I will say, wait for a while, and you'll see, it is the world's best, I told you so.